Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 88 Kiali community meeting. So here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go over some of the things that we did in Sprint 88. We're going to go over some of the things that are going to be in the Kiali release for this sprint, which is version 1.66. We're going to go over what we're going to be doing next sprint for version 1.67, and then open it up for community discussion. So here's an overall picture of what we accomplished this sprint. Most of the work was done in the Kiali repo, but there's also things going on in the Core UI repo and Service Mesh plugin and operator. And there's a chunk of backlog work that made it in that's going to be carried over to the next sprint, but that's partially just because of the size of the epics that we're working on and some of the work in progress there. So here's what's going into this release. The Kiali component library. So we're going to be splitting out some components of the Kiali UI into their own separate library. And these will develop independently of the Kiali UI, but the goal is to be able to reuse those once those are more mature, and also reuse those in other applications, such as the OpenShift Service Mesh plugin. Does anyone else on the call want to talk more about that?
Well, yes. Commented, we want to split or to extract all the core UI, all the core Kiali core components that we have, and in order to be reused in applications, for sure in Kiali UI, but we also have the offensive service mesh. There are other applications like Backstage for other developers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the goal being just being able to reuse more of the components into different applications that do similar things to the Kiali UI. All right, another big effort of this sprint was multi-cluster. We made good progress on the backend implementation. So some of the things that we completed or are pretty close to being completed are namespaces, so getting namespaces across multiple clusters, the services list page, the workloads list page, so seeing services and workloads across multiple clusters. And next up for this is finishing the implementation of those and then moving on to the details pages so that you can drill into specific services across multiple clusters. And just a brief summary again of the goal of the multi-cluster effort. It's really to provide a unified view of your Kubernetes config and your metrics and all of that, so you can go to a single Kiali UI and see your service mesh even spanning across clusters. I believe Josune is going to give a demo of the namespaces.
Let me try to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is an overview of what we have done with in this example. I have installed using the hack scripts multi-primary deployment. In this case, we have Kiali in just one cluster, the cluster East, and we have also in cluster B, we have Istio D, also because it's a multi-primary deployment. We are working in have a version of primary remote deployment also. In this case, we will only have the control plane and the Kiali in one cluster, in the primary cluster, and just communication with the remote clusters using the Cube API. So here, what we have done so far in our mesh stars, you can see the cluster names that we can get access to. We can see, for example, that cluster East has an star because it's the where Kiali is installed, and some data to access the other clusters. And the first big changes that we have done in the backend, there are changes to use that the Q clients to access the remote namespaces. So in this example is deploy, you can see two Istio system namespaces to control plane cards because it's the multi-primary deployment. And we can see all the namespaces that they seem duplicate, but this namespace is coming from the East cluster and this one is from the West. And you can see that for some applications, we don't have information about the status of the applications because they are deploying the remote cluster. The idea is to keep working on this page, in the overview page, so we can we show where this namespace information is coming from. And make a differentiation if you are seeing a namespace from which cluster. But for example, we can see here the West namespace that is just deploying the remote cluster of the Kiali access. And we, at the moment, we don't see the applications because this is still a work in progress. So yes, we will continue working on this. And at the moment, another work in progress is to see the workloads for all the remote clusters where the user has access to. And not a big changes will be in this screen. Just we include a new column to show which is the cluster where the workload is deployed. And probably we will be adding a new filter to be possible to filter by cluster and have the information more accessible. And I will stop sharing. And pass the mic to Nick again.
Can you see the slides again?
Yes.
Thanks a lot for the demo. So there's also some Istio ambient work happening. Do you want to talk more about that, Josune?
Sure. This is another work in progress, and to put you a little bit more in context, there is a new architecture for Istio that is going to be deployed or released in the next Istio version in 1.18. And Istio is going to add a new component where instead of the sidecar, we are going to have another components in the network that we can, the sidecar functionality is really split into components. One that is working in the layer 4, that is the cTunnel, and another is the waypoint proxy that is going to have functionalities of the layer 7 and the application layer. So we would like to have some changes in Kiali so we can identify when we are have any cTunnel or waypoint proxy, even if we don't have a sidecar, to show, for example, not the warning that the sidecar is missing, because in that case, if we are in ambient and we deploy a cTunnel, we can have security or telemetry features just with cTunnel. So we are working in identifying these components, like you can see there in that example. We will see a label that we are having a cTunnel. Or if we, for example, install the control plane using the ambient profile, we will see a label there. And we will see also labels where the namespace is labeled using an ambient annotation instead of the sidecar. This is not a substitute of the sidecars, but it can be used in the same mesh, but just for the namespace that is meant to have like just an ambient or a sidecar annotation. So the idea with this development is to identify these situations. And well, this is still a work in progress, and we were hoping to release something in the next version. But if you are interested in this, here you also have a link with the GitHub issue to provide some feedback about more details about how do you expect these components are visualized in Kiali. And that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, if you have feedback about this, please let us know on that issue. Some other notable changes that went into this release. There was a backend crash when Istio D resources were not set. There's a fix for that. There's a new multi-cluster demo out there. There's an issue with the operator's makefile pull secret that got fixed. There's a fix for Prometheus metric scraping in both the operator and Helm charts. Thanks to the community user that contributed that. There's a deprecating Ansible setting that got fixed, and there's also a hack script for running Kiali locally in primary remote deployment. So that's what's going to be in version 1.66 of Kiali. This is just looking forward to version 1.67 and what you can expect. What's on the left are the larger efforts that are going to span multiple releases. You've got multi-cluster OSSMC, which is the OpenShift Service Mesh plugin, tempo support, pattern fly topology for Kiali Graph, and what Josina just talked about, which is the ambient mesh behavior with Kiali. And on the right-hand side are things that are carrying over the backlog, so specific tasks of these larger epics that we plan to work on. But that gives you an overall picture of what the plan is for version 1.67. And that's it. I'm going to stop with the recording and open the floor up for questions.